you think Ian is a good choice to test Islam, who will be going for his 17th straight UFC win, trying to break Anderson Silva's record, which he's currently tied with.
Oh wow, yeah, that's wow. I think it's gonna be a good fight. Jan Garry, it's definitely a tough opponent, very good striker. But Islam once again his goal gonna be to bring the fight to the ground, and I think if he's able to do that, he's gonna have an edge. If Jan Garry is able to keep it on the feet, and Jan gonna have an edge, so it's gonna be interesting. Islam has the edge in terms of skills because he's more well-rounded. He can do it all, and he, especially with his grappling, he's got an edge in that department, and I think that's what he's gonna try to go for. Maybe he will eventually go up in the middleweight and try to go the three-weight class club.
Ian versus Islam, dude, I think Ian gets it done. I think Ian's that fucking good. He's so big, he's so long, and he's so confident.
It's a hard fight for Islam Makhachev, right? Garry is a very big guy for the weight class, very tall, very agile, and can move around for 25 minutes if need be, which could cause issues for Islam. He'll be a shorter fighter.
Ian Garry's 6'3", and he's so good at his lateral movement. He's so good at fighting at his range. And he's a real welterweight. He'll probably walk in the cage 193, 195 pounds. Beeb said it himself. He's like, Ian Garry is a real problem for us. This guy poses a serious threat.
Ian wins this fight. It's landing a shot, stand up, hurting him to finish him.
I agree. The best chance he has, though, is to run and frustrate Islam into bad shots, bad takedowns, also bad throat strikes on the feet because you're overreaching. Because Islam is used to dominating. He wants to run and go in there and just take him down, submit him, or beat him up on the feet. And if this fight is just slow and it's boring, Islam will make some mistakes.
That's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to control the airspace, and he's going to stay on his footwork. He's going to jab the glove a lot, and he's going to move, and he's going to have to make Islam throw some heavy shots to get his attention, and then blast through him.
Islam Makhachev and his upcoming fight. He made a successful debut in the upper weight class, step up to welterweight. What difference does it take when you stepping up in the weight class on a championship level?
Yeah, Islam's going to fight against Ian Garry next, right? I assume that Islam's going to win that one just because of his wrestling pedigree, To be able to dictate if the fight's going to be standing or on the ground, it's a great gift. Another guy with a strong team behind him, strong faith. I'm not rooting for anyone in that fight because I don't know either one of those guys on the personal level, but I'm assuming that Islam's going to win. That's my prediction.
9 days out from UFC 330, and the final wave of expert predictions is in. After months of build-up, training camp footage, and pointed trash talk, the MMA community has largely made up its mind on Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Garry, and the consensus is about as one-sided as it gets, heading into a welterweight title fight of this magnitude. Sean Brady, one of the top contenders in the very division these two are fighting to control, didn't hold back when asked to break down the matchup. Ian is definitely a big guy, but he isn't going to put you out in one shot, Brady told Home of Fight. The moment Islam gets his hands on him, expect him to make it one-way traffic. Brady went further, drawing a specific comparison to explain exactly why he sees this fight playing out so lopsidedly. He contrasted Garry with Michael Morales, arguing that while Garry brings genuine height and reach advantages into the cage, he simply lacks the power and physical strength needed to keep Makhachev at range for a full 25 minutes. Brady's final verdict was blunt. I just think it's one-way traffic for Islam, he said, predicting a submission finish. That kind of direct dismissal has become a recurring theme across nearly every corner of the sport this week. Jorge Masvidal, never one known for holding back his opinions, broke down Garry's chances on a recent panel, alongside former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman. His defense isn't bad, and his footwork is what I think is amazing, but he hasn't grappled with a guy like Makhachev, Masvidal said, praising Garry's individual tools while ultimately concluding they simply don't translate against this specific opponent. He pointed to the technical details that separate elite grappling from merely good grappling, the sweeps, the inside trips, the upper body, suggesting Garry's experience, however impressive against previous opponents, hasn't prepared him for the specific level of control Makhachev is capable of imposing. Weidman's red leaned heavily into the psychological dimension of facing a threat this constant. I think this is going to be a really stressful fight for Ian Garry, Weidman said. I don't think he is going to be that comfortable, because he's going to be worried about the takedown, because he sees how good Islam's on the ground, and Islam's going to throw hard on the feet too. That's a genuinely important point buried in Weidman's prediction. It's not just about whether Garry can physically defend takedowns. It's about what happens to a fighter's composure and decision-making when the threat of being taken down never actually goes away for a single second of a 25-minute fight. That psychological framing matters, given Weidman's own history at the championship level. Few analysts understand better than a former UFC champion exactly how much mental fatigue compounds physical fatigue across a 5-round fight. A fighter spending every moment defending against a takedown threat isn't just burning energy physically. He's burning cognitive resources too, constantly recalibrating footwork and positioning rather than focusing purely on offense. That combination, according to Weidman, is exactly what makes facing Makhachev so uniquely draining compared to a typical 5-round title fight. Dustin Poirier, someone with more direct personal experience of Makhachev's dominance than almost anyone else making a prediction this week, echoed that same sentiment. Poirier, who went the distance with Makhachev before ultimately being submitted in the 5th round of their UFC 302 encounter back in 2024, picked Makhachev to retain his title, joining a growing list of current and former UFC stars landing on the same side of this fight. The betting markets tell an almost identical story to what these fighters are saying. Makhachev enters as roughly a -310 to -325 favorite depending on the sportsbook, with Garry sitting as an underdog in the range of +240 to +250. One detailed breakdown from OddsShark laid out exactly why that number reflects genuine confidence in Makhachev's specific skill set against this specific opponent, arguing that Makhachev's superior chain wrestling and sharper transitions turn Garry's own physical advantages against him. Once Garry gets put on his back, those long limbs that help him on the feet become handles for Makhachev to work with, the analysis noted, a detail that reframes Garry's height and reach, usually considered clear advantages, as potential liabilities the moment the fight hits the mat. Not every voice in this final wave of predictions has landed entirely against Garry, though, and it's worth being fair about that split before writing this off as a complete lock. Charles Oliveira, submitted by Makhachev back in 2022 and now working directly with Garry's camp, has continued backing his training partner publicly, believing Garry has a genuine, credible chance to pull off the upset despite odds makers heavily favoring the champion. That's a notable dissenting voice, coming from someone who's actually felt Makhachev's dominance firsthand and still believes discipline and game plan execution give Garry a real path through it. There's also real substance behind Garry's case, beyond simple hope. He earned this title shot the hard way, taking the Rachmanov loss directly on the chin before bouncing back with a tough, competitive win over Carlos Prates, and then outpointing former champion Belal Muhammad. 70% of his UFC wins have come by decision, reflecting a fighter built for pace and composure across full fights rather than one who relies on early finishes. He also holds a genuine 5-inch height advantage and a 3.5-inch reach edge over Makhachev, physical tools that, according to at least some analysts, could create real problems if Garry manages to keep the fight standing for extended stretches. Still, the sheer volume and consistency of predictions landing on Makhachev's side heading into fight week is hard to ignore. Beyond Brady, Masvidal, Weidman, and Poirier, additional fighter panels featuring names like Sean Brady, Mauricio Ruffy, Davey Grant, Caio Borralho, Demetrius Johnson, and Gene Silva have weighed in with their own breakdowns in recent days, and the overwhelming majority have landed on the same side of this fight. When this many current and former UFC athletes, competing across multiple weight classes and possessing very different fighting styles themselves, arrive at nearly identical conclusions, that consensus carries real weight beyond simple herd mentality. Makhachev's own resume continues to be the foundation underneath nearly every one of these predictions. He enters this fight with a 28-1 record, tied with Anderson Silva for the longest active winning streak in UFC history, at 16 consecutive victories. His most recent performance, a dominant 50-45 sweep of Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322 to capture the welterweight title, included going 4 for 4 on takedowns and racking up 19 minutes of total control time across 25 minutes of fighting. That level of statistical dominance, delivered in his very first fight at a brand new weight class, is exactly what's fueling this level of confidence heading into his first actual title defense at 170 pounds. Makhachev has also publicly stated his own specific prediction for how this fight ends, telling reporters he expects to finish Garry inside 3 rounds through relentless pressure and grinding control. That level of public confidence, paired with nearly unanimous expert backing heading into the final stretch before fight week, has created a genuinely rare situation where the champion's own read on the fight and the broader combat sports community's read are lining up almost perfectly. So where does that leave things 9 days out from Philadelphia? The final wave of expert predictions has overwhelmingly settled on Makhachev, built on his superior chain wrestling, his statistical dominance in his last performance, and genuine questions about whether Garry's tools can hold up against sustained, relentless pressure for a full 25 minutes. But Garry's own path to this title shot, his height and reach advantages, and real belief from at least one former Makhachev opponent working directly in his corner mean this fight is far from a complete formality, regardless of how lopsided the prediction consensus has become. What's your final pick heading into fight week? Are you siding with the overwhelming consensus favoring Makhachev's wrestling and control, or do you believe Garry's size and composure give him the real path to the upset that Oliveira and a handful of others are still backing? It's rare to see this much agreement across so many current and former UFC fighters heading into a title fight of this magnitude, and that consensus alone should tell you how seriously the entire combat sports community is treating Makhachev's continued dominance. Drop your prediction in the comments, and subscribe for more UFC 330 coverage as Fight Week arrives.